Good evening, everyone. I'm Georgia Davis, and welcome to AZ Illustrated Nature. Coming up next, we'll tell you about a historic binational effort affecting the Colorado River in the United States and Mexico. People from all over the world are in the region to witness this important environmental event. Also, we'll take you on a visit to Ironwood Forest National Monument to show you why this is a special place, and visit Pima Prickly Park, a relaxing 9-acre oasis. But first, here's a look at the day's headlines.
The Arizona House Appropriations Committee whisked through the budget process this morning, but when the $9.2 billion spending plan reached the floor this afternoon, it bogged down. About 100 amendments were filed to the bill, which delayed floor votes for hours. Even if the amendments align the Senate and House budgets, the legislature still must negotiate with Governor Jan Brewer. She said last week when the Senate passed its version of the budget that the spending plan was a good starting point, but she indicated it was not totally acceptable. The plaintiffs in 2 federal cases challenging Arizona's ban on same-sex marriages are asking the court to consolidate those cases. The attorneys for the 2 groups say the cases deal with the same legal issue, and combining them would save time and resources. Currently, 2 different judges are handling those cases. In 2008, Arizona voters approved a constitutional amendment banning same-sex marriages. There is less than a week left in the open enrollment window for the Affordable Care Act's health insurance exchanges. Groups across southern Arizona are making their final pushes to get enrollment up around the region. The deadline to purchase health insurance through the federal government's new insurance exchanges is Monday, March 31st. With just under a week left, large numbers of organizations are making that final push. And that's a look at tonight's headlines.
Scientists from around the world are gathering in Arizona and Mexico this week to witness and study a historic event. A binational coalition is releasing water into a Colorado River delta south of Yuma, Arizona, where there has not been a regular supply of water for decades. Environmentalists say this is significant for the river and hundreds of animal species that evolved in conjunction with the river over millions of years. Tony Paniagua has an interview with 2 experts. Dr. Karl Flessa is a professor of geosciences at the University of Arizona. Dr. Rebecca Lester is a senior lecturer in freshwater ecology at Deakin University in Australia. Both are in northern Mexico this week, but they spoke to us on Friday before departing to the Colorado River.
Dr. Flessa and Dr. Lester, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Let's begin with you, Dr. Flessa. You are in the Department of Geosciences here at the University of Arizona. Why your interest in the Colorado River and how far does it go?
Well, I've been working on my students and I have been working on the Colorado River for about 20 years or so. And we've been documenting some of the environmental effects of upstream water diversions. And we've been trying to find ways in which to bring water back to the environment and figure out how much water would be needed to restore those habitats.
And Dr. Lester, you teach at a university near Melbourne, Australia, and you are very far away from home. Why did you come here to Arizona and to Mexico to see what's going on?
I came here to observe the water release that's about to happen, and I'm particularly interested because I work on a very similar river system in Australia, the Murray-Darling, and so we have really similar issues with not enough water for irrigation and for human use as well as for the environment. And so I have been, similar to Karl, studying the effects of that in our Australian river system.
Okay, great. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But Dr. Flessa, when many people see video or pictures of the Colorado River, they see the rafts and the rapids and so on in the Colorado and the Grand Canyon, and they think that the river is wild and free and flowing all over the place. So that's not the case.
Well, it's an amazingly regulated river. There are many, many dams on the river, and and 100 years ago, the river was controlled largely by seasons and by climate, and now it's largely controlled by the dams and by engineers who sit at the controls. And when you get down into the delta into Mexico, there's not much water left, and it's flowing out over a very, very low gradient, very flat plain. And most of the water that makes it to Mexico is then used in Mexican cities in agriculture. So the delta's become dried, largely dried up, and it's largely been dry for the since about 1960.
So how important is, or how significant is this flow that is about to be witnessed?
Well, I think it's significant in that this is our first attempt at an engineered spring flood. We want to try and see how much water it takes to bring back some of the natural trees and bring back the bird populations that depend upon that vegetation. And we're really trying to figure out how to do restoration with the smallest amount of water possible.
And Dr. Flessa, you mentioned a similar river in Australia. Tell us a little bit more about that river, please, and the impact, the human impact that it has had on it.
So at the moment we're taking about 2/3 of the water from the Murray-Darling for human use, whether most of that goes to agriculture, but a lot of it also goes to the capital cities that we have in Australia for drinking water and other things. And so that has had an enormous impact on the way the river works. It no longer has the same amount of water, but it's also about the timing that the water is there. Things expect it to be there in wintertime and in spring, but with irrigation, what you want is to have the water there in the summertime. And so all of the seasons are kind of reversed with the way that we've changed the river. And so that has had a significant effect also on the quality of the river. It's much saltier than it used to be. And so the birds and the animals and the plants that live there are now living in a very different environment from what they would have naturally. So we need to try and do similar things in Australia and release water specifically for the environment to try and make sure it's there at the right time so that fish will breed, that the birds will come and that there'll be food for them and habitat for them to breed in. And so we've been studying the best ways to do that within our Australian river system.
Okay, and Dr. Professor, approximately how much water is being released as part of this experiment?
The pulse flow that's going to start on Sunday is going to release 105,000 acre-feet of water. That's far less than 1% of the river's actual flow, way far less than that. And that's going to happen over an 8-week period of time. And we're going to try and see how the groundwater reacts to that, how far the surface water gets, and then how many cottonwoods and willows respond to that by germinating and growing.
And unfortunately for the river and the environment, I would presume this is something that's not going to continue to happen year after year. Is that correct?
The plan is under the treaty agreement. This is a one-time event within the 5-year period of the treaty agreement. If the treaty agreement gets renewed, and which we all hope that it does, we hope to see similar sort of pulse flows so we can recreate spring floods in the future.
When was the last time that something like this happened, approximately?
The last time we had any sort of flows of that amount were probably in the late 90s, brief period of time. But the biggest flow that happened since 1960 were the big floods in 83, 84.
Okay, and Dr. Lesser, obviously Australia is considered to be a very dry continent, dry country.
Yes.
What are some of the challenges? I would imagine many of the challenges are similar to Arizona and the rest of the southwestern United States.
Yes, that's definitely true. One of the things in common between the two river systems is how variable the flows are. So we have extremely dry years, and we've just come out of a 10-year drought cycle, and since then we've had extremely wet years. So it's not necessarily the same amount of water that is going down each year, which makes it really difficult for people to plan. So farmers need to know how much water is coming so they know which crops to plant. We always need to have the water available for human use, and then there's not necessarily a lot that's left over for the environment depending on how wet each year is. So that's a major challenge for us.
Okay, and how is your research going to evolve during the time that this is happening? Dr. Flessa, are you going to get down there and take measurements or take pictures? I don't know.
We've got a really big team of people from the U.S. Geological Survey, from the Sonoran Institute, from the University of Baja California, from Mexican environmental organization called ProNatura, the Nature Conservancies and Nature Conservancy folks from here in Tucson. We're down earlier this week. I'll be going down to the Delta tomorrow morning and to witness the opening of the dam a little bit on Sunday morning.
And obviously this is a big event for you as well. Dr. Lesser, you traveled all the way from Australia. What do you hope to take back to your country?
Karl and I are hoping to do quite a lot more work in the future, and so one of the things that I'd like to take back is an understanding about what the similarities and the differences between the two rivers are, so that when we're looking at the knowledge that we share, we know which bits are going to work in both countries and which bits we're going to have to think about and say, well, because of these differences, we're going to have to do it a little bit differently in Australia or do it a little bit differently here in the States. So that's really what I'm hoping to do, is to see how it varies. And it's exciting to see water going in an area where it hasn't been for such a long time.
And do you think that the interest in this topic is increasing? Dr. Flessa, I know that there's an effort right now called Raise the River.
That's right.
What would you like to say about that?
Well, I think that's a great project. I mean, that's a terrific project to raise money to essentially lease water or buy water from Mexican farmers with an agreement to then to sort of put that water to use in creating wetlands and creating the sort of riparian habitats, the river habitats that were there before 1960. There's a lot of interest from the people who live in the area in that part of Baja California. And it's a great way for people around the world to show their support for this sort of effort.
And then finally, Dr. Flessa, why should the average person care about topics like these, about the rivers flowing again? Many people say, I have my water from the tap. Does it really matter?
All of the river systems are connected. I mean, I know a lot of the water that you use here in Tucson is groundwater. That all still comes from the same place. It's not a separate system. So keeping the river environment healthy means that we have good, clean, healthy water that we can drink. We've got a regular supply that we can use. And we also get a lot of benefits out of having healthy wetlands as well. They do a lot of work in terms of cleaning that water for us and to make sure that it is actually suitable for us. So it's not just about being able to turn on the tap. That has to come from somewhere. And so these types of projects make sure that we can keep that in a balance so that we have enough water for both humans and for the environment.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Flessa and Dr. Lesser. Thank you for joining us and good luck with your research.
Thank you very much.
Residents in southern Arizona are blessed with many outdoor options for recreation and exploration, to include a large, pristine desert that encompasses parts of Pima and Pinal counties. Next, we take you to Ironwood Forest National Monument west of Tucson. The monument has opportunities for hiking, horseback riding, camping, and other activities. And it has a growing number of fans, including scientists and the Friends of Ironwood Forest.
The Ironwood Forest National Monument is really unique. It's very close to Tucson and right outside of Marana, but it seems worlds away. It's a very undeveloped area, and it's 129,000 acres of public land, and it's really enjoyable to get out and explore it on your own. It's a very self-directed exploration.
Well, it is named after a tree. It's not the reason the monument was created, but it is named after this tree because it's so prevalent out here. Many locations have the ironwood tree in it. It likes to grow on the bajadas and the slopes of these hills around here. The flowers come about late April, early May. It's a pea flower that's with pink and white and lavender petals. It gives it a pinkish hue. Some of the trees are darker. Just gorgeous. The seeds, the beans it puts on are edible. It's a great tree. It's a long-lived tree compared to something like a Palo Verde that might only live 100 years at most. Ironwoods can live hundreds of years.
It is designed to be primitive and to stay primitive. So it is unlike a national park experience or even going to Forest Service area. You're not going to find restrooms and you won't find water. You definitely want to come prepared. You'll find there's no paved roads within the monument. And some of the roads are challenging. They require high clearance on many, four-wheel drive on some. So you really do need a good map, and roads aren't marked. So you need to have a little sense of where you want to go, how to get there. It's a very self-directed exploration. It's very primitive, and I believe that there is a high demand for that type of place. And I think it's only going to get, I think we're only going to see an increase in that as the populations continue to increase, where people really want to feel like they can get away from it all.
I made my first visit out here in 1987 and just fell in love with it and hiked and hiked and hiked and just studied the heck out of the place for many, many years. I'm still studying it. Mostly the vegetation. I'm very interested in desert vegetation and floras, and I've put together a flora of each individual mountain in this national monument as well as the whole national monument, the valleys included. It is very rich. It's got close to 600 species that we've discovered out here so far, and many of those, probably over half of them, are very small plants that most people would walk right past and not even notice, much less realize it's something different.
Ragged Top is known as sort of the gem of the Ironwood Forest National Monument. It's a unique geologic formation, and what you're looking at is an exposed vent of the inside of a volcano that used to exist. You're looking at rhyolite that's left over, and the outside of it has really eroded away to give it that unique form. It's thought to be about 22 million years old, And as those crevices have formed and that unique cracks and crags, it's formed these microclimates that have really supported a huge number of unique plant species.
Rocks on the south side hold heat in the winter. The rocks on the north side make shady, cool microclimates. They shed rain into crevices and keep things moister. And so it's a very rich habitat compared to any other place on the Ironwood Forest National Monument. We've got 593 species on the monument, and over 400 of those can be found just right here on Ragged Top.
In addition to the plant species, it also provides really great habitat for the area's last remaining native herd of bighorn sheep. So we have desert bighorn sheep up there. This area is favored for lambing of the desert bighorn sheep. And our herd up there is really special. It was almost wiped out in early 2003, 2004, right around that time. Some goats got loose and introduced 2 diseases, and Game and Fish had to go out and administer some antibiotics by being helicoptered up there to the very top. It's very precarious footing for humans, let alone sheep. And it was only because a grad student was noticing some odd behavior of the sheep that it was caught, and we're very, very fortunate. Now the herd has come back.
What does it for me? I just think it's the beauty, the fact that it's so close to Tucson yet fairly untouched, and just the variety of plants, and the topography, the animals, everything about it.
One thing I want to make sure to mention is the archaeology. It's not easy to see because sites aren't marked, but the Ironwood Forest National Monument was set aside because it contains evidence dating back over 5,000 years ago, and it's very prolific. Anywhere from evidence of old villages and ball courts, trincheras, which were the agricultural fields and the watering systems that were used by ancient civilizations. A lot of evidence in petroglyphs scattered throughout the monument, really dating back to the Hohokam period. And there's a lot of evidence that they were here that has been sort of preserved within this landscape. And there's a lot of opportunity for scientific exploration for archaeologists to come out and uncover some of these sites and tell us more about that history. Very small portion of the monument has been surveyed for archaeological evidence, but the part that has been surveyed has been instrumental in indicating it's very rich, and the history is definitely worth preserving. It's a national treasure of archaeological history that's found out here. I personally really like it because it has a wilderness quality to it. It's wilderness characteristic, and conservation is the top priority for the area, and it's a young national monument. So how that's managed is still getting formed, and that's something that the Friends of Ironwood Forest is very engaged in, is setting the tone and helping the Bureau of Land Management look ahead to how do we conserve this national treasure for future generations.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next News Hour, Margaret Warner continues her reporting from Ukraine, moving west to Kiev. That's Monday on the PBS NewsHour.
Barrio Azteca gang members are accused of killing hundreds in Mexico and Texas.
These are guys who wear body armor and know how to build car bombs and how to use an M4 or an AK-47 or some of these more high-caliber, nasty military weapons.
I'm Linda Wertheimer. A deadly drug gang on the borderlands on the next morning edition from NPR News.
There is a growing effort underway to engage children in outdoor activities. The Cooper Center for Environmental Learning west of Tucson has been doing this for decades. The center has welcomed more than 130,000 kids since it opened in the 1960s, and preparations are underway for a big 50th anniversary celebration. Joining us in the studio is Colin Waite, the director of the Cooper Center. Also here is Joan Gilbert, the regional science coordinator for the Tucson Unified School District. Thank you to both of you for coming in.
Thanks.
So Colin, I know you were just here not too long ago, but tell us a little bit quickly about the Cooper Center, what it is, what you do.
So the Cooper Center is a partnership between Tucson Unified School District and the University of Arizona's College of Education. And we offer programming that gives positive natural world experiences to K through 8 students mostly, and actually for learners of all ages is our goal. And we also teach basic ecological concepts to give the science connection to the experience.
All right, and so Joan, tell me about what you do with TUSD.
Oh, I am so fortunate. I work at the Regional Science Center, and we provide curriculum resources for all the teachers in Tucson Unified School District. And when I say resources, for K-8, we have kits, and teachers receive a whole kit, like one topic might be water. And a teacher receives a whole kit for a unit of study. They don't have to purchase anything. They have what they need, the hands-on materials. So it's great hands-on inquiry science, and a lot of our standards are connected to the environment. So a lot of teachers find those connections between their classroom and going to Cooper.
So I guess they'll teach the basics in class, and then they'll head out to Cooper Center, and then what would happen then, for example, with a water lesson?
Well, I mean, basically what we do at Cooper is we try to provide the real-world context that goes with what they're doing in the classroom. So a water lesson might include looking at erosion or how plants use water and adapt to having less water in the desert. But each grade level has a different program at Cooper, and we try to make those classroom connections wherever they fit.
Well, Joan, and you were telling me you used to be a principal, so you've had a lot of experience working with children.
Yes.
What kind of a difference does it make taking the kids out into these real-world natural environments?
Yeah, it's a world of difference. There's so much we can do in the classroom, and there's just 10 times, 100 times more we can do out in the field. Kids are open, they're engaged, they love to be outdoors. So it's just this great synergy that you can have kids, plus their parents come. So we also, have our community engage in the Cooper lessons. It's a great way to learn. Kids love it.
Well, in addition to motivation and enthusiasm, I mean, what else does learning outside bring? I mean, I assume it brings a different way of thinking.
Absolutely. We're talking about connecting with the real world, and teachers want to do that with their children. They really want to think about what's the so what? Why are we learning this? Kids want to know, what's the relevance? Why do we care about this topic? Why do we care about learning this? And Cooper's one way that teachers and kids and their families get it.
All right, well, Colin, briefly tell me what's happening for the 50th anniversary.
So we're planning events for the entire year. This coming Saturday, March 29th, we have an open house with a food truck roundup and music from some Tucson Unified School District performing groups, live animal demonstrations, stargazing, campfire, and it's going to be going on from 5 until 9 o'clock on Saturday. We also are trying to reconnect with people who have been to Cooper over the years and get them to be involved in Cooper moving forward into the future.
And storytelling, right?
Yeah,
so
we want to hear the stories of all the parents and grandparents and kids who've been out to Cooper over the years.
All right, sounds great. Thanks to both of you for coming in.
Thank you.
People who like the Sonoran Desert and its plants can learn more about them at Pima Prickly Park. It's part of a cooperative effort that is transforming several acres of land into a living and educational laboratory. This story is produced by Arizona Public Media apprentice Anna Augustowska and photojournalist Andrew Brown.
People usually think of the desert as a barren, lifeless habitat, but the Sonoran Desert is a whole different scene. It's filled with vegetation, and some of these natural examples are here at Pima Prickly Park in Tucson. Located near West River Road and the North Camino de la Tierra, Pima Prickly Park is home to almost 3,000 native and non-native plants. Even though the park opened in 2011, many people still don't know about this place. Jessie Bird is working on changing that.
Pima Prickly Park is a joint project between the Tucson Cactus and Succulent Society and Pima County to develop a 9-acre park, cactus park, public, free to the public, open all the time from dawn to dusk, full of the nicest things, the nicest cactus that our desert has to offer.
Most of the plants in the garden have been donated by different members of the community. Others are rescues from construction projects around Tucson. Burr says the garden would not be possible without volunteers.
So what we do is we go out in the desert where development is going to happen, and a group of volunteers, dig up as many of the cactus as we can possibly manage. As strong as we are, we get the biggest ones that we can handle. And a lot of them find homes in our members' gardens. A lot of them find homes through our plant sales, and then the very special things come to Prickly Park where everyone can see them.
Shelley Bully comes here frequently. At the park, she likes to relax and appreciate the desert environment. For Bully, who is originally from Missouri, this habitat is truly unique.
The reason why I come here is to watch the wildlife and to look at the beauty and nature out here. I like it here. I think it's a wonderful place to come. It's good. It's well kept up, and there's a lot of beauty and nature to see here.
Over the years, Pima Prickly Park has brought plants such as saguaros, barley cacti, hedgehogs, mesquite trees, and palo verde trees. It also holds one of the nation's biggest collection of prickly pear and cholla cactus. But just a few years back, this place looked completely different.
Originally, this was like a 60-foot gravel pit. And when Pima County wanted to build their natural resources, parks and recreation buildings, they were required to fill this in. And so it was just filled with everything they could find, but as it settled, it wasn't compacted, so you couldn't use it for soccer fields, you couldn't put any other buildings on it, and so it just kind of laid waste. There was almost nothing here.
Some of the plants have been moved at least a few times before they finally found their permanent home at the park. Saguaros in the Saguaro-henge are a case in point. Inspired by the famous Stonehenge in England, Bird says the saguaros were put in the circle to honor the ancient relationships between people and the Sonoran Desert.
I think it's interesting when you see wild plants in organized patterns, and so the fact that it's a circle and Saguaro-henge, everybody thinks that that's just great. It gives a destination rather than just saguaros. It's actually a place to go to.
Supporters say this park could actually serve as a national model in a few ways. Dick Weedoff, the president of the Tucson Cactus and Succulent Society, says the park represents a sustainable landscaping and outreach model.
The concept was kind of education of the public by osmosis. To put in a cactus and succulent garden and bring in some plants that aren't native here and show people how wonderful the use of cactus and succulents in their landscape could be, you know, and show them how they can save money by saving on water and saving the environment. We aren't trying to force people to do it, but we want them to see the beauty of all these plants, and that just kind of gets people excited.
So far, the estimated value of the plants in the garden is about $100,000, but this is just the beginning. The volunteers have a 15-year operating agreement with Pima County. Members say they still have a little more than 7 acres to fill up, and they will keep adding plants. After all, there's a lot of beauty to show off in the Sonoran Desert.
And that's our show. To keep up with the latest news or to watch the segments from this or any other editions of AZ Illustrated, you may visit our website at news.azpm.org. I'm Georgia Davis. Thanks for watching.